Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 6 Things That We Learned from Bradford City 1 at Grimsby Town 1. If you do want to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 80 likes on today's video, that'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We are on the road to 8,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed. If you haven't already, with that post notification bell on, it's free to do so and it does massively help out. Get your thoughts in as well down in the comment section down below. Let me know down below your take on yesterday's draw. Obviously, overall, with the circumstances considered, it wasn't a bad point, but the first half was terrible. The second half was much better when we went to the back four. Once again, it's another point picked up, but it's another game where we're at home. We should be winning our home games, especially with our away form this season so far not being great. Lots of controversy on social media from what I've seen so far. Lots of debate, a lot of people not happy with what they're seeing for the majority of yesterday. I am today, though, of course, joined by Frank, and we're actually recording this on Saturday night. It's the first time this season we've actually been able to record on match day, so emotions are much rawer and all that sort of stuff, but obviously the early kickoff does allow us to do that. So let's start off then with the man of the moment, one of the few positives to really come out of the game, Bobby Poynton, again, massively impressing at 19 years of age, and you think with the way that he conducts himself on the pitch, he's a senior pro, absolutely fantastic. Green box every day of the week for him once again. Obviously, his first competitive league start for Bradford City, and he absolutely took that opportunity. You know, we've seen recent performances from Clark Adore, Jamie Walker, where they've been a little bit anonymous in them forward positions. I thought first half it wasn't his greatest, but especially in that second half where he got more of the ball, he was absolutely brilliant. You know, Grimsby changed their left back. They put a right back with a bit more pace on to try and deal with Poynton, and even a tied Poynton was still taking on their fresh left back, who was actually a right back. But I thought it was absolutely brilliant. Obviously, he gets the assist as well for Gilead's goal. Overall, it's just an absolutely brilliant performance from him, and there's only more better things and bigger things to come for Bobby Poynton. The fact that Ash Taylor is on a longer term contract though than Bobby Poynton is something that does definitely still concern me. I think we need to be opening up negotiations with Poynton if they've not already started, because we can clearly see what a talent that he is. He's a Bradford fan. I'm sure he's going to want to stay here for many years to come. And like Mikey said, we need to make sure that he swims and doesn't sink. But I think with the way he's performing on the pitch, he's making sure other players around him are the ones that are not sinking, because he is not even swimming. He's doing the English Channel swim at the moment. He's been absolutely brilliant so far this season, and it absolutely has to be a green box.
Yeah, well, you argue that this preseason definitely helped Bobby Poynton. Obviously, it's his first kind of senior involvement professionally. Obviously, we've known it. He's been out on loan to Brighouse, Liversidge, and then type of clubs. But you just wonder why he wasn't getting in the team ahead of some players last season. You know, Costello, Nevers, you tweeted it, and I completely agree with you, to be honest. Like, Bobby Poynton at 19 years old is probably head and shoulders above most of the players in the squad. And that is pretty telling as to how this kind of window shaped out. For like the opening 5 minutes, you can tell the nerves were kind of there, which is understandable of, you know, a player who supported the club all his life. Sky cameras, especially the heat as well. I mean, I don't know about you, but I was sweating in that chair watching Bradford this afternoon. Never mind playing 90 minutes of a football game. And, you know, there was someone that passed out in the cop as well. That just proves how hot it was. So praise to them as well, because it must not have been pleasant in that heat. But back on the Bobby Poynton, absolutely tremendous once again. He's demonstrated off the bench, you know, how good of a footballer he is, and to get that first start today was definitely a few question marks whether how will he do. But from minute 1 to 90 today, I think it was absolutely outstanding. The work rate he puts in every single game is unbelievable. In that heat, didn't stop running the whole 90 minutes. It's just absolutely fantastic, and a lot of players in that heat. With the Sky cameras and especially the atmosphere today, it was quite intimidating. Grimsby were absolutely fantastic today in terms of the fan base, didn't stop singing the whole game, so fair play to them. But, you know, a lot of players would have crumbled under that pressure, and we definitely saw a few players succumb to that as well. But Bobby Poynton was absolutely unbelievable. For that Gilead goal as well, you know, he was patient on the ball. He had that full back on toes the whole game, and he was patient in his play, debated about crossing it. It's a lovely drag back, finds Gilead. I mean, it's fantastic vision for a 19-year-old, and it's a fantastic finish from Gilead. We've been wanting Poynton to start, and I think the performance today definitely warrants, you know, one of the first names in the team. She absolutely outstanding, and, you know, this Adore thing is kind of a blessing in disguise. You know, there's a few question marks whether or not he may not have started if Adore was in contention, and a few other players as well. So to say that he's got the start today, he's definitely shown himself, and I could not be happy for him. Someone who's followed him for a while, you know, it's what we dream of as fans, you know, having an academy player that gets gelled into the first team squad and does so well. You know, it's the stuff of dreams for us as fans, and obviously for him as a player. So congratulations to him, and long may it continue, because he's a great player.
Yeah, I just hope it's not going to end up being like a situation where we saw a couple times last season where a younger player comes in, someone who's not necessarily deemed to be a starter. They come in for a few games, or we've got injuries or suspensions, and then we don't see him for another 10 games after that, or they don't even make the bench. Like, I think he's proven now he's more than good enough to not only be in and around the squad, and I'm not saying he should be starting every single match for the rest of the season, because I don't think that's viable, especially because while he's clearly a very good footballer, he is still going to have some bad games. Like, I thought he started out the game quite poor, so a poor touch and a poor control here and there, but he really did grow into it. And I think he will only get better and better, in my opinion. We'll move on then from Pointon, who was very good. Someone who was a little bit hit and miss was Mr. Mark Hughes. Now, the first half and second half were massive contrastations. I don't really know what the right word is, but it was a massive contrast in that second half compared to what we saw in the first half, and that's why it's yellow. The first half, again, terrible, so poor. Defensively, I thought for the large part, we didn't look too bad. We didn't really look like conceding. It was just, we've switched off. We got our press completely wrong, and we allowed them just to put a free ball into the box. Somehow we've got 3 centre-backs in there. Not one of them's picking Danny Rose up. I don't really know how. The second half, Hughes clearly saw there was a problem, and he changed at half-time. Now, I don't know if that was injury enforced or tactical. It seemed like from his post-match interview, that seemed to be much more tactical, and you've got to give him credit for that. While I'm not Mike Hughes' biggest fan, because the first half was terrible, he made the changes, and the changes did work in the end. We were much better, and we were getting at them. We were playing some attacking football. Now, I think we still ended the game, though, with only 1 shot on target, which is completely not good enough. I think Swindon today had 28 shots. I mean, you contrast that to us, we might have had 5 shots in total. It's all well and good having lots of corners and possession, but if you're not really making things of it, then you are going to struggle at times to score goals. And I understand from the point of view that we have Cook, Oliver Smith out injured, and Derbyshire was the only real option. But we all knew going into the game, Derbyshire was not going to be able to last in that heat. And he didn't even start, never mind last year. He was absolutely abysmal. We'll get on to Derbyshire later on. But Hughes, for me, got it completely wrong. And it sounds like in his post-match interview, he's happy to stick with the 3 or 5 at the back. And I just don't think it works. We look so much better in a back four when we've got pacey wingers on trying to get at the opposition defence. And I've gone with a yellow for Hughes. I could completely understand, though, if it's red. But me personally, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Some changes at halftime did certainly make us look a lot better. I'm going to go with a yellow box for Mike Hughes.
Yeah, I looked in the Sky Sports interview after the game. I was, looking for a lot of the content, watching the game back and so and such, and just looking at what was happening during the game. I looked at the post-match interviews, and when you've got the captain, Richie Smallwood, admitting it wasn't good enough in that first half, and you've got Alex Gilead, the goal scorer, admitting it wasn't good enough in the first half, and so many other players coming out and speaking about it, saying that it wasn't good enough, and then for Hughes to kind of pat himself on the back, it just didn't really make sense for me. I feel like we all know he's pretty stubborn about this 5-back. He's claimed he isn't, but if he goes with the 5-back against Harrogate, I think it's very telling us that he wants to play the football this season. I mean, how 3 muscly centre halves are losing a header against 5'8" Danny Rose, that's something that you can't really change tactically. So I think that's a defensive error. But in terms of the tactics, it was just so flat, bleak, backwards football all the time, on the counter, and then the wingers or whoever was on the ball just didn't seem to want to take it on or play it forwards, and the option was always backwards. I mean, it's good for, ball retention, possession, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for goals, and, it just wasn't good enough. We saw it going backwards constantly. And I thought to myself, is this Hughes' fault, or is this just how the players are playing? It's quite hard, and they're just looking to sit back, trying to get a draw. But then when we switch it up second half and we change the formation, we look like a completely different team. I mean, that second half, I wouldn't say it's the best performance of the season, but as a contrast, to the first half, it's night and day. It was absolutely fantastic, especially that last 10 minutes as well. During period before that Gilead goal, it was just so much intensity going into it. We were pressing in the heat, and we were just throwing everything at Grimsby. And I just, why do we do that all game long? And we demonstrated at Crewe as well when we switched up the formation. We were much better. And how many times this season have we realize that it isn't working, switch to a 4-back, for example, and it's worked? It's just like, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, Hughes is seeing it. We switch to a 4-back. It's evident. He's the one switching to a 4-back. It's changing everything up. We look like a much better team. I think that's got to be the thing going forward. And don't even get me started on Derbyshire. I'm going to absolutely, it's going to be enjoyable to talk about Matt Derbyshire in the next segment. But I think the second half we set up much better, but the tactics to begin with were just not good enough. And obviously sat down in the technical area, 1-0 down again. I mean, there's so much going on right now, and I think Gilead, I tweeted about it. Gilead really saved his bacon today because there was a lot of angry fans that you could tell by the atmosphere and how the game was that it wasn't going to be claps and cheering at the full-time whistle. And Hughes might have been in a bit of a sticky situation, but I still feel like the football wasn't good enough today. I mean, we could have got 3 points out of that had we have played a fallback from the beginning. Yellow box for me, I agree. And let's just move on from that because we could talk about Hughes for ages.
Yeah, right. We will move on then. Derbyshire's not quite next. Brad Halliday is, though, obviously the job to mark out Aboisa of the game. Obviously, his first return to Valley Parade. And I said it in my video for my vlog as well. That was Aboisa's best performance in Bradford shirt. He was absolutely shocking. Every first touch, Halliday was getting a toe in. Every time he went anywhere near the ball, Halliday took the ball off him. Every single time, Issa hardly had a sniff. He had one shot from distance, which went miles wide, and Halliday was absolutely brilliant. Green box for him every day of the week. Defensively, again, very, very solid. Going forward, not as good as what I think we know he can be, but I think he was a bit conservative because he didn't really feel like he had the protection behind him potentially. But defensively, it was brilliant, and that is what you want from Halliday. That is his role in the team, is to mark out their left winger, and I thought he did it absolutely superbly. It was another brilliant performance from him, and again, it just begs the question, why did we bring in Daniel Oyegoke? Because Halliday is much better than him. Oyegoke now can't get into the team, and Brentford are not going to be very happy about that, but it's not really our fault. It's not Hughes' fault. Oyegoke didn't really prove worthwhile, and Halliday's come in, taken his chance, and I think in every game he's played so far, he's looked absolutely brilliant. I mean, pretty much every game he's played, we've given him a green box for, and defensively, again, absolutely solid. And Issa's been on fire so far for Grimsby this season, scoring screamers left, right, and centre, and Halliday completely marked him out the game. Every time Issa went near it, he wasn't even like being rough around the play. He was going straight in there, winning that ball back. And if Issa were trying to take him on, he was trying to go inside, outside. Halliday won't fault him for it every time. And I thought it was absolutely outstanding, Brad Halliday. Once again, I absolutely love the man. I think he's absolutely brilliant personally.
Yeah, Aboisa, I mean, when you look at it, and the statistics and, you look at everything really, he's one of the most informed players in the EFL at the moment. And certainly going into the game, there was a lot of, talk about Aboisa scoring, the curse and all that carry on. But Halliday completely marked him out the game. He was absolutely outstanding today. And like you said, it begs the question, why was Oyegoke starting in the first place? Brad Halliday definitely warranted his place in the side, especially after last season performance. And then for Oyegoke to almost waltz into the side, it didn't really make sense. And I think obviously with him playing right wing back, he was obviously kind of forced to be quite an attacking player. And I think in that second half, when he's obviously playing in that conservative flat full-back position, he definitely, had the freedom to kind of just focus solely on Aboisa rather than joining the attacks. And I think that's definitely better. Obviously, it suits Brad Halliday to be in a conservative flat back four and, in his natural position, defending Aboisa. He was absolutely outstanding today. And, I'd much rather see people like Harvey Rowe in the team rather than Oyegoke, someone who's kind of an understudy, a backup and, can come on if needed. Bobby Poynton's been a prime example of someone who's started off as a backup from the academy and then he's come in and done a job. So maybe Harvey Rowe's maybe something that we can integrate in the team, because I think I'm just about done with Oyegoke, to be honest. There's not much time for players to be, kind of slacking or dropping performances like that. There's, players that will take his spot. And Brad Halliday outstanding today. And, I definitely feel like if we switch that back four, he's got to be one of the first names in the team sheet. He completely suits that back four. And, like we said last season, there was no need to change the system up. Halliday, with being one of our best players last season, I feel like we had to kind of stick to the basics and, what was right. And, switching to the back five has definitely been, a key factor into, looking at the fact that Brad Halliday is one of the first names on the team sheet. He's absolutely outstanding today. And hopefully this means that Brad Halliday is going to start starting consistently instead of getting put to the bench every now and again. I definitely feel like he warrants a spot in the first team now.
Yeah, before we get on to our fourth box, then make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't already, and get a comment in as well down in the comment section down below. And next up then is Matt Derbyshire, and it's a red box for Matt Derbyshire. Now, we were probably not expecting Derbyshire to start, because when Hughes, announced that Smith was probably going to be unavailable for this game, and he was then asked about it. Well, what are your options? And he said they might have to try something different. So I personally thought they were probably going to play Walker maybe as a false nine. They started with Derbyshire, and I genuinely hope I don't see him play for Bradford City again. He got a red box against Mansfield. It's another red box for him again today. Mansfield, I thought, you know, he came on off the bench and didn't really have much time. Looking back on it, it might have been a bit harsh, but today, absolutely shocking. I mean, there are a few times where you're looking over to the bench to see if he was coming off. Yeah, he just looks like he doesn't want to be here. He looks like he can't be bothered. And overall, it was just a shocking performance. Failed to hold the ball up once, you know, falling over his own feet. Can't control the ball, can't dribble, has got no pace. He just offered absolutely nothing, especially in that first half. He did completely nothing with any slight opportunity. And I feel like when we saw a Foker come onto the pitch, again, we'll get onto him in a moment, but a Foker at least looked to put a bit of a physical presence about, looked to hold the ball. I'm not saying Derbyshire should be picking the ball up, taking it past 3 players and whipping it in the top corner, because that's not the type of player that he is. But I just feel like Derbyshire wasn't the right choice when you consider the weather and all that sort of stuff. And you know, his performance was probably what we expected. I don't think Derbyshire anywhere near good enough. I think we should have spent that money somewhere else on a different option up front, because Derbyshire for me is just completely not good enough. You know, he's had a couple hit and miss moments, but he's been a lot more misses than hits. You know, he's had the odd half decent, you know, goal he scored away at Stevenage was nice. Obviously scored a big goal against Carlisle in the playoff semi-final second leg. But apart from that, his overall play is just not good enough, and he definitely needs a partner up there with him. He definitely can't lead the line on his own, and it has to be a red box for Derbyshire because he was absolutely terrible.
You know, we said it as well the last time we talked about him on the 16 v 11 video, that he just clearly wasn't good enough for, you know, at Mansfield. He just stropping all the time, and he did it again today. Just, you know, he was getting bullied by them Grimsby centre-backs, and he dropped to the floor. He just gets up slowly and trundles back to position. I mean, there was an instance in the first half where I believe he joined up with an attack, and then he's just kind of stayed in an offside position, and he's walking back, and then the ball comes to him and he just walks towards it, even though he knows he's 30 yards offside, and then just tries to play on as if it was nothing. I mean, his IQ for someone who's gone so far in the game is absolutely abysmal. I mean, he seemed to do sort of well in terms of flicking on the header, but there was no one to flick it on, so it's kind of just doing it for the sake of it, you know, trying to look good. And, you know, it was pretty telling, you know, as soon as the team sheet came out, especially with the heat as well, we knew how bad he was going to be. And I said it before kickoff. And, you know, when the Tyler Smith injury got announced, I was like, oh, God, Derbyshire's going to be starting. And a few fans were like, oh, maybe he'll prove us wrong. But, you know, especially when you've got that kind of attitude at Bradford City as well, you know, that kind of attitude as a striker, you know, it's a privilege to start for Bradford City. You know, it should be treated with respect when you're putting on the shirt on, and he just seemed disinterested. I mean, if you're going to be like that, just retire. You know, he clearly doesn't seem to have the love, the drive that he had for it last season. Anyway, you know, came off the bench and he didn't seem too bad. You know, but you know, towards that back end, even after the goal at before the goal at Carlisle, he just seems like a kind of a waste of a spot on the team. And you know, there's definitely players that we can go for. And there's a debate on Twitter. You know, even if we had Jake Young, maybe he wouldn't get the same amount of goals he's got that he had at Swindon, because he's linking up well with Dan Kemp, and there's no one for Jake Young to really play off. But he certainly wouldn't do any harm as opposed to a 37, 38-year-old Matt Derbyshire. You know, he'd be much better off starting the game. He's energetic, and you know, he's demonstrated today. He scored twice again today. He said there were 4 disallowed goals in the Swindon game, so maybe there was a chance of a hat-trick, maybe even more than that. And Jake Young can clearly score goals at this level if you've got good players around him. And it's just another poor decision, especially when you've got Derbyshire taking up a spot on the bench. You just wonder why Jake Young was kind of forced out of the club. And if he was forced out of the club, why have we not brought in a replacement for Matt Derbyshire, who simply can't do it at this level anymore? It's frustrating. Obviously, he didn't have many options to start up from, but, you know, I'd rather us have started a Foker or just someone else, to be honest, because he clearly can't cut it at this level. And definitely a red box for me.
Yeah, I think some things that really, really did annoy me in Derbyshire, I didn't actually mention to start with, were firstly the offsides. It wasn't just like once or twice. It was pretty much every time we'd play a ball forward to him, he'd still be walking back from offside. And I don't really know how he was always offside, because he wasn't making any runs in behind. So I don't really know what was taking him so long to get back. And the thing that annoyed me the most is the keeper had the ball at his feet. We're 1-0 down, and Derbyshire's just casually strolling towards him. Like, I'm not saying you've got a full sprint towards him, because the keeper doesn't have to pick the ball up. If it's been kicked by us or it's been headed back to him, he doesn't need to pick it up, so he can stand there for the rest of the game. And while we're losing, them extra seconds are vital in a game. You know, if you think that Gilead goal could have been a minute or two earlier and then there'd have been a minute or two longer at the end, and you just don't know. And it's these fine margins in games where he obviously knows he's not going to play the full game because he knows that he's not fit enough at his age to do that. So why not, while you're out there, go and at least jog the ball down? Don't be casually strolling. Like, if we were 2-0 up, that's completely fine. But if we're 1-0 down at home, just go and charge the keeper down or do something to get the crowd going. It was so frustrating to watch, and it absolutely has to be a red box. But we'll move on from Derbyshire before my head absolutely explodes. Alex Gilead was one of our halftime substitutions. Obviously, hasn't been involved in the squad for a couple of weeks because I think it was a thigh or a quad injury that he picked up away at Stockport, and he came back in his position that he's been playing for the last couple of years that we know him most to be, as a central midfielder in a pivot with Smallwood. And I thought he looked quite good, to be honest with you. You know, I have been someone who's criticised Gilead a fair amount, so when he plays well, you know, I think we've got to give him credit for that. Obviously, he comes up with a goal, and it's a brilliant finish, and that's what we need to see more from Gilead. We know Gilead's got a decent strike on him. He just needs to use it more, and he will score more goals. And sometimes, you know, players might turn around and say, why aren't you passing me the ball? Why are you being greedy? But we need goals from midfield, and Patterson is a prime example of that. And if Gilead wants to stay in the team, and he wants to keep Patterson out the team, they're basically competing for the same spot. Gilead needs to score more goals because Patterson, when he does come back, he'll probably come back into the team, whether that be for Gilead or whoever. And I have no doubts Patterson will continue his form and carry on scoring goals. So Gilead needs to continue providing chances, you know, scoring goals. And he linked up with Poynton very well, and he is a good leader, is Gilead. And I thought overall it was a very good performance from him. He affected the game off the bench like what you want your substitutions to do. So it has to be a green box for me.
Yeah, we've seen Alex Gilead, you know, kind of step in as captain a few times. And, you know, that's kind of the leadership qualities we're talking about. You know, he's played at City before. He's played here a number of years, actually. So he kind of, you know, he's kind of integrated himself within the team. And obviously he's been, you know, in and out of the squad recently with obviously the signings that have come in. So, you know, it must be hard for him, you know, kind of pretty much a starter in the team last season to kind of a bench player. But, you know, he's some of the best stamina I've seen out of a footballer in the EFL. You know, he can run for days, Alex Gilead. There's no question about his work rate. You know, if he was as good as football as he had good work rate, I think he'd, you know, be a first team player quite easily. You know, he'd be starting week in, week out. But especially with that stamina, it'd be interesting to see maybe him starting next game. You know, if we dropped McDonald or we dropped Smallwood, you know, McDonald got brought off, you know, in that first half. So it'd be interesting to see if there was kind of, you know, an injury thing to that, and if maybe Gilead has a place in the team next season. You know, he got brought off in the second half, and I thought Gilead did pretty well since coming on. Obviously, like you said, he got the equaliser in the end. So I think if he wasn't starting, it'd, you know, be a bit unfair on him, considering, you know, he's got that equaliser and he did play pretty well, and, you know, he's got that stamina like we've said. So I think it'd be definitely interesting to see him start at Harrogate. You know, obviously we know, you know, Levi Sutton plays for Harrogate, and, you know, they've got a lot of engine in that team, Harrogate, and they'll run for days. Josh Falkenham, you know, Levi Sutton, lots of players that work hard in that team. I think Gilead would be a good player to put in that team for that game. So, yeah, I think Gilead should start the next game. You know, he wasn't, you know, a standout player in that game by any means, but especially with the stamina, you know, the goal, I think it's all set up for him to finally get a start in this team. And who knows, maybe it's a start of a, you know, starting form for Alex Gilead at Bradford City.
Yeah, like you say, I thought he did have a really, really good game, and I just hope that he continues with it. It's all well and good scoring in one game, but if that's his only goal for the season, then it doesn't really mean all too much in the grand scheme of things. He needs to go on and be aiming for, you know, 8 to 12 goals is what you want from your midfielders. And if Gilead can be someone who provides that, it takes then a bit of pressure off the forwards, because it looks pretty unlikely Cook's going to get 39 goal contributions like what I did last season. But we'll move on then to our final box. We spoke about him a little bit earlier. Chisholm Afoka. I've gone with a yellow box. Now, his overall play, I was really impressive, and he was close to getting a green until that dive in the 94th minute. I mean, that was absolutely criminal. That was potentially the worst dive that I've ever seen. He wasn't even anywhere near anyone, and he just threw himself to the floor. And again, it's the fine margins that I'm talking about in football. He could have quite easily got off a shot there, and their keeper looked really, really suspect. He looked really unsure in his decision-making. Could potentially do better for the goal. You know, some of his distribution was poor. You know, the way that he came out and swept up the ball. I thought he was really nervous goalkeeper. And, you know, when we've just scored, Afoka's got in the penalty penalty area. You never know what could happen. And to throw yourself to the floor like that was really disappointing. And that's why I can't give him a green box, because that was a big chance missed. But I thought his overall play was quite good. I was impressed with his technical ability and his physique as well. I didn't realise how big that he actually was. I think he's 6'1", 6'2", and I thought he was going to be the winger and Tulloch was going to be the striker. But it seems Tulloch's more of a winger and Afoka is more of a striker. And I don't mind that whatsoever, because Afoka has a big physical presence, gave their defenders actually something to think about when Derbyshire hadn't done anything for the first 65 minutes. Afoka was really putting himself about a bit. I thought he linked up the play very nicely. And I think a goal is going to come for him over the next couple of games if he keeps playing like that and keeps getting opportunities. And I think, you know, if Cook's going to be out quite long term, which is what it does unfortunately look like, Afoka is another good hold up striker, but he's got a bit about him technically as well. He looks like he's, you know, got some good trickery, looks like he's got some good technical ability and link up play. And I was overall, like I said, quite impressed with Afoka, but that dive was just absolutely criminal. So I can't give him any more than a green. So that is why I'm going with a yellow.
Yeah, you know, to say it's his first senior minutes in football, you know, it's very, very impressive from what we saw. It's not easy going from Premier League 2 playing in front of, if 100 people, you know, there's not many people that turn up to them Premier League 2 games. So, you know, to step in front of a crowd of nearly 20,000 with the Sky cameras and, you know, the sun blaring down on you, to say that's your first kind of involvement in senior football, it's absolutely outstanding from Chisom Afoka. You know, like I said earlier, why was he not starting over Matt Derbyshire? I get he's not kind of played senior football before, but you kind of must have some sort of grasp of what he's like as a footballer. You know, we've brought him in from Aston Villa. He's quick, pacey, direct. That's what, you know, described him as. And, you know, he has done pretty well for Aston Villa's, you know, youth setup this season. I think I'd much rather watch him play than Matt Derbyshire. And I think after today's performance, you know, he definitely proved me right there. Obviously, like you said, there was a bit of debate. Maybe Ryan Tulloch could have started for Bradford today over Matt Derbyshire. There's a few chats about him possibly being a striker. I've never actually seen evidence to provide that. I've looked on transfer market. He's played 1 or 2 games for West Brom's youth setup in that position. But yeah, Chisom Afoka, like you said, I didn't realise how tall he was. He seemed like a 6'1" kind of player. You know, he's pretty tall, and obviously we saw him drop back quite a lot to help out with the defence. And, you know, we saw him starting the counter-attacks and he looked pretty dangerous. He's very, very technical on the ball. He was skinning a lot of the Grimsby players who tried to tackle him. I think what we were trying to play was quick counter-attacks on the break, and, you know, that was kind of causing Grimsby a lot of problems that game. And with him and Poynton, it was very, very refreshing to see them both just kind of driving at the defence. And Chisom Afoka, I definitely think, you know, he's in contention, especially with, you know, the injuries that we've got up top. I think he's definitely in contention for a start at Harrogate. You know, he was definitely impressed me. And obviously with him being pretty tall, I think, you know, he could definitely do a job starting up front. You know, we've got players like Bobby Poynton who like to get the ball in the box. And I definitely think that could definitely work as some sort of a link up between the two of them. So, yeah, Chisom Afoka, pretty impressive on debut. You know, let's not get ahead of ourselves. It's his first few minutes in senior football, but definitely some promising signs from the youngster.
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on Afoka. We might as well touch on Tulloch, seeing as though we brought him up briefly there. I actually thought he looked quite good. You know, he's got some poor reports from his previous loan clubs, but so did Tariq Wright. You just don't really know. And I think he showed sometimes he's going to overdo it. There were a couple of times where he picked up the ball, he beat a player or two, and then he looked to try and beat 3 and 4 rather than just trying to make the simple pass. I think them sort of relationships will build as time does go on. But to look for me, again, has shown some good spikes and some good promise. I think he's certainly much more of a winger than a striker. And like what I say, I think similar to Afoka, they both clearly want to do well. Now, whether it's they want to do well for themselves or Bradford City, you never really know with a lone player, but they both seem like, you know, good people and they seem like they want to do well for the club. So we'll just briefly touch on Tulloch there. I thought he had a pretty decent impact off the bench as well. Yeah,
looked pretty good. Obviously, it's quite early on, you know, early doors. I think, you know, another player that didn't really get many minutes and we can't really make a full judgment on Jonathan Tomkinson. And, you know, there was an instance where he kind of smashed the ball out of play, which kind of made me pretty angry. You know, you got to be composed in them situations. And, you know, there was, you know, 3 debutants today, pretty much. Ryan Tulloch, we didn't really see much of him at Mansfield as well. So, yeah, definitely interesting to see, you know, almost 3 new signings come into the fold now. It definitely provides a lot of cover for those positions. Obviously, Chisom Afoka is definitely an option up front now. Ryan Tulloch's definitely someone can bring off the bench. And, you know, Jonathan Tomkinson as well. You know, that defence was definitely at fault there for that Grimsby goal. And had Jonathan Tomkinson been in there, you never know, 6'4" frame, you know, it could have been avoided. So definitely provides a lot of cover at the back now as well. We've got a lot of defenders. Apart from Ash Taylor, I wouldn't even class him as a defender. I think he's just kind of someone who's there, definitely not in contention. So it's kind of almost as if we've transferred him out and brought him in a new centre back. But yeah, Jonathan Tompkinson, another player who's not really played much in a Bradford City shirt. It's quite early doors, but there's a lot of promise from the new signings. I definitely feel like we needed to get some business done on deadline day, and I think the signings that we brought in were definitely good ones as well. So Tulloch, Afoka definitely provide some fantastic cover for Bradford, especially off the bench as well, and even some competition for Matt Derbyshire and the defence as well.
The final thing that I do just want to actually quickly mention before we go, I know we're taking a lot of people's time here, so I do apologise, but the EFL squad registration thing came out, and obviously you can register 22 outfield players who were 22 years of age or over, I do believe, and we registered 21. Timmy Odesina was someone who has not been registered, so he can't play up until at least January. So I think that indicates he will probably get a move out to the National League North or South potentially. And I just wanted to quickly get your thoughts on that, the fact that he's not being registered at all when we've got a space to do so. Do you think that means we might be looking at bringing in a free agent, or do you think we may be saving that if we potentially need to get an absolute last resort free agent in a position, say we lose all our left backs or all our right backs potentially? What are your thoughts on Odesina not being registered despite us having a spot available?
I think it's an interesting one. How are people like Ash Taylor not getting deregistered and Tim Odesina, he's kind of been excluded from the squad? It didn't really make sense. I didn't think he was a bad player last season, to be fair. He was definitely a bit out of his depth. He didn't really play in a back four very well. And, like I've said multiple times, we switched to a back five this season. There was a perfect chance for Odesina to get his chance, and he just didn't. It didn't really make sense. I think he's been included once all season, and that was on the bench at Wrexham. He's not had a chance at all this season, and he's given chances to Ash Taylor, and he's given chances to so many other players. I just think it's kind of like it must be some sort of Jake Young attitude problem, whatever it is, because there's no explanation why he's not even getting on the bench half the time. So it's definitely interesting that he's not been registered, and I think a loan move obviously is needed, because if you're not registered and you're not playing, then you've got to seek football opportunities elsewhere. And I think a loan move with the circumstances probably be good for him. We saw Wrexham sign Stephen Fletcher midweek. He made his debut at Doncaster today, I believe. So the free agents market is definitely still alive. There's a lot of options, and I've looked through the list. There's lots of options. How realistic they are, I don't know, but I wouldn't say the panic button needs to be pressed yet. Before the game, I probably would have said, yes, we do need to make a signing, and that signing needs to be a striker. But with Afoka definitely been an option up front now, I think maybe there is some sort of chance that him and Derbyshire could play in, kind of a front two. I wouldn't, be against that. I think maybe Derbyshire does need another chance, especially with the forward situation. We don't really have much of a choice, and I think with Point and how attacking and direct he is to get balls in the box, I think Derbyshire would definitely feed off that really well. We didn't see much today, of course, but I think, it's something that is on the table, and I think obviously with that one registration spot being available, it's definitely interesting. But the thing is, we do need to use it at some point before January, whether or not it's a striker, a left back, a right back, a goalkeeper. I feel like that does need to be used and utilised, because there's a reason we've deregistered Odesina. I think that is kind of like a get out of jail card. So it would be definitely interesting to see what position it would be. But, I definitely think that we do need to use it before January, and what position that may be, I'm not too sure. I'm not sure what you think the position needs to be, but I don't think we need to press the panic button yet, but definitely interesting.
Yeah, right. We'll leave it there then for today's video. Thank you all very much for watching. And Frank, as always, thank you for your time. If you have enjoyed watching, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try to 80 likes on today's video, that'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We are on the road to 8,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already, with that post notification bell on. It's free to do so, and it does massively help out. Get your thoughts in on yesterday's draw down in the comment section down below. Thank you all very much for watching today's video. Have a great rest of your day. Go check out the match day vlog as well from yesterday if you haven't already, and we'll see you all next week for the Harrogate 6 Things That We Learn. Peace.